This edition of the Platform is brought to you by Roomettes, the fastest way to create the illusion of 3D interiors in your model railroad structures. And by Nick's Trains, home of the Decoder Buddy. When it comes to making DCC decoder installations and upgrades easy, Decoder Buddy is your best friend.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Platform, the Christmas special. You know, when I think of Christmas, I think of family, and I think of family gatherings. I think of all my uncles wearing their plaid shirts, and my aunt making a too large raspberry trifle. I suppose I could bring you along to a Fallowfield family Christmas, but I got a better idea. Why don't I bring you along and introduce you to my railway family at the Waterloo Central Railway. Waterloo Central is a heritage railway located in the heart of southwestern Ontario's Mennonite country. It's a picturesque place where things move at a slower pace, where a beloved engine named Number 9 still steams, and the internal combustion engine hasn't fully replaced the horse-drawn carriage. Lace your boots, put on your gloves. Let's go for a ride. I'm being joined in our Bud Car studio here at the WCR now by the Waterloo Central's general manager and my boss, Peter McGough. Peter, thanks for being here today.
You're welcome, Bob. My pleasure.
I brought you in here because on behalf of the volunteers, we'd like a percentage increase on our free volunteering. So if you could double zero for us for next year, that would be great.
I would like to I'll make the announcement now that everyone's pension is being doubled as well.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, the retirement benefit, you know, if that could kick in too, that would be...
I was going to leave this as more of a Christmas Eve surprise, but now that you forced it out of me.
Thanks for joining us today. Peter, you actually are a retired fireman.
Yes, I am.
Or
yeah.
Firefighter, I guess. I have to be PC. Tell us the Coles notes of your firefighting career.
I was with the Kitchener Fire Department in Ontario. We're sort of about 60 miles, 100 kilometers west of the city of Toronto. We have had, since I'm not there anymore, 7 stations. And I was there for 35 years. I was lucky to have started when I was 18, so I was able to retire early.
Don't date yourself.
It was the best job in the world.
Yeah.
I used to be at the front of the truck and go to a call thinking, I can't believe they pay me to do this.
And before becoming a professional firefighter, you actually have a railroad in your job history.
Well, I always enjoyed trains and railroads. My great-grandfather, my dad's family's all from Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, Pennsylvania. And he was a steam locomotive engineer in the 1920s and 30s on the Black Diamond.
Oh, wow.
Lehigh Valley's premier passenger train.
Yeah. On
the section from Wilkes-Barre, Sayre, in that area up towards Buffalo. So
excellent.
There is a little bit of heritage. So I worked for CN when I was very young, coming out of high school, and also then I worked for CP as an operator when they still had operators where, you know, train order signals, you stood in this era of safety. It's hard to imagine that your job was to stand next to a train going by at 30 miles an hour with a stick and a string.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing could go wrong at all, especially at night. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've always had this interest in railways, yes, even when you were firefighting. What brought you to the Waterloo Central Railway, and when was that?
Well, it was when Solars, which is a Southern Ontario Locomotive Restoration Society, which is the parent group of the WCR, they got it going at the old New York Central shops in St. Thomas. But when all that came to an end, they came up here and worked out an arrangement with the Waterloo region, which owns the Waterloo Spur, and started up here. And that was in uptown Waterloo, which is Kitchener and Waterloo are twin cities. Waterloo is maybe 100, 125,000. The region is about 600,000 in total. They put out a little call for volunteers, and I just lived about 5 blocks from there. I walked over. I said, can I be an engineer and conductor? He said, sure. And that's kind of how it started. We are a licensed short line in the province of Ontario. So the province of Ontario has an arrangement with Transport Canada providing the oversight, and we follow all Transport Canada regulations. So we're trained to the COR.
The Canadian Rail Operating Rules.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Railroading has its acronyms.
It is. It's almost like the Navy.
Yeah, and I'm sure firefighting.
It did.
All these little subcultures have their acronyms.
They do.
Yeah.
So nobody knows what you're doing.
Yeah. So the WCR is a real railroad.
It's a real railroad. Yes.
It's not somebody's pet project in their backyard. It's a fully licensed short line.
Fully licensed short line. We have to meet all the same requirements as the Class 1s, maybe not to the same degree or detail as far as certain things, but it's all...
So for our audience who might be totally unfamiliar with the operation here, give us the Coles notes of what the Waterloo Central Railway is in terms of trackage, location, why it exists.
Well, it runs from... We used to run from uptown Waterloo until last few years where they put a rapid transit system in. And part of that rapid transit system still allows freight to come up from the city of Kitchener from the Canadian National's Guelph sub in the middle of the night, but they can only come up in that sort of a time work between like midnight and 4 a.m. because they have to travel over one of the 2 rails they built for the rapid transit system was designed for heavy rail, and the system doesn't operate during that time, so they can come up to Northfield Drive in Waterloo is where we start and the transit system ends. So we have a little platform there, and then the Farmers Market, which is quite renowned in southwestern Ontario, is our first stop, and then the village of St. Jacobs, and then, which is about 2 miles north of that.
And where we're sitting now.
Where we're sitting
Wonderful
now.
St. Jacobs,
yes.
So at the windows here.
And then further north of us by about maybe 4 miles, 7 kilometers, is the town of Elmira, which is actually the end of the Waterloo Spur. So this spur was built in the late 1800s and actually had passenger service and mixed train service to just prior to World War II. We have trackage rights from 0600 in the morning till 2300 in the evening, and then CN has trackage rights at night to provide the freight.
And they have a freight customer in Elmira to the north.
Yes, there's 2 chemical plants and a lumber yard in St. Jacobs that they provide freight to 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
And then we have a shop and maintenance facility in the village of St. Jacobs where we are now.
Yeah. What year was that constructed? If you had to ballpark.
It's I would say about 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
And although we had contractors involved, we bought the building, put it up ourselves, laid the track. And that sort of leads me to one other thing I just want to make sure I mention before we get too far into this. There is no way this group could have ever come to pass, continue on, or even planned for the future without the volunteers. The volunteers are the backbone of this place. They do everything. They restored the steam locomotive from scratch. They built bearings in somebody's machine shop in the floor. It's hard to explain.
I heard that number 9 had come to the property in 500 pieces on 3 or 4 different flat cars.
I was not involved, but
that was back in the Don Broadbear days.
Broadbear day. I've seen photos, and I've seen the boiler and the cab in a gondola, and 2 separate gondolas.
Wow!
It's astounding what they did. They had the old New York Central shop, so there was some cranes, but most of the tools are gone. A lot of the blueprints were gone. The expertise just astounds me. But what really astounds me as much as anything, when I first came here, there's really definite paths of interest for the volunteers. There are some people who just want to work in the shop. They don't care if they ever ride a train. They just want to work in the shop, and they want to get dirty. hence the name Dirty Hands Club on Saturdays when I first came here.
There's lots of opportunities
There's
to get
lots
dirty
of
here.
opportunities to get dirty. Yes, do not wear good clothes here at all, ever.
At any time.
That's right.
Yeah.
You will try to avoid grease, but it will find you
Yeah.
somehow. And then people who like to be on the train really have no interest in being in the shop. It's almost a rarity to find the person that kind of likes both.
Yeah.
But we also have, we have 3 diesel locomotives that we've acquired over the years as well. We've tried to rebrand ourselves in the last year or so with a standard color scheme, because up till the last year or two, our colors were basically the railroad that they got the equipment from. That's the colors. So now we've gone to the old CP Tuscan. Our diesel locomotives are painted now in the original CP gray Tuscan.
They look sharp.
They look really sharp. There's a lot of groups out there that have done this very well before us. And the group that sticks in our mind the most is Strasbourg. So we really look at Strasbourg seriously to see how they've done their operation, how they've branded themselves. Little tiny things, like just before the pandemic hit, our volunteers who work on the train as trainmen, we went out and got them new conductors uniforms, new caps. So that is the image that the passenger will see when they get here.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody who maybe we gave them a T-shirt or a vest, or just to try and step it up a little bit.
Yeah. And for those who are unaware, Strasbourg is a railway in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, southeastern Pennsylvania.
Southeastern Pennsylvania.
And what's intriguing is that it's a similar culture and heritage there as well as here. So that is a very predominant Amish area of the U.S., whereas Waterloo region, we used to call it Waterloo County, where we are, is basically home of several old order Mennonite communities.
Yeah.
So it's not unusual to see a horse and buggy waiting at the tracks.
Yeah. Which is really neat when it's number 9 running down the track.
Oh, it's so cool. It's
Yeah.
just
makes for some great period photography.
It does.
Yeah.
We're very lucky here. We have a little bit of combination of some urban settings at the south end of the track and farmland, maple syrup. Elmira is the home of the largest single-day festival in North America, the Elmira Maple Syrup Festival.
Sounds like a good place to get some pancakes. Not that I need them.
Nor do I.
I've heard it said that pancakes are just an excuse to eat butter and syrup. There might be some truth to that. Peter, a couple of more questions for you before I let you go. I was talking to somebody else in the railways management, and he said to me that the WCR is becoming more of a heritage railway as opposed to a tourist railway. What does that mean to you?
It means our focus is on the operation of heritage railway equipment. We don't look at ourselves as a tourist operation or an amusement park train. Like there's some amusement park trains where it's a little bit kitschy. I'm not sure what the right word is. We're trying to evoke an experience of what it used to be like. And along with that is the preservation of heritage railway equipment, and going back to putting the crew in what you might call a traditional uniform or outfit. We're asking the engineers and conductors to wear the pinstripe, coveralls and that sort of thing. I think it just adds a nice little touch.
We're creating a time machine.
That's a very good way to put it. In
a way.
That's the best way I've heard. I've not heard that one. That one is, Bob, that one's genius.
You can use
you
it
should get,
for a small royalty.
I was gonna, if that's not made for
depends what you do with my volunteer paycheck. Depending on how that shakes out,
just don't tell everybody. Just delete this part. Yours is quadrupled. Everybody else is doubled. But that's worthy of a T-shirt.
Yeah. It's a time machine.
It's a time machine.
WCR, Back to the Future.
Yes, very good. We're trying to just evoke the heritage aspect more than just taking a train.
And I think it's a little bit sort of like the Field of Dreams mentality. If you build it, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if the Strasbourg model is a good one, and if we do stay true to the Canadian Railway heritage and the heritage equipment, I think if you build that, I think the people will come.
And it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, the group has been successful here, but I think we can be more successful. And that's not to say we're not going to do things like dinner trains. And we've had sommeliers on and did a wine and tapas train, things like that. But there's a fine line between going over to what's schmaltzy and what's
Yeah.
more.
And the last question I had for you, and you've sort of touched on it, is without giving away any inside baseball, what can you tell our audience sort of about future plans or what the future may hold for the WCR?
Well, one of the things that we find is that we can't think of a successful operation like ours that does not have a railway station. And that's one thing we do not have is a railway station. We have our shop, which is great. It's not a heritage building, it's an 8-year-old steel shop, but so that's a goal. And we would like to
have a railway station.
To have a railway station somewhere.
Yeah.
That's a big one. We are putting together an action plan for 2021. One thing that the pandemic did do for us was allow us the luxury, if you want to call it that, in 2020, to go back and look at everything we do and ask the question, why do we do this? And for a lot of it, the answer's been because we always did it that way.
Sometimes a pause can be a good thing.
Yeah, and so we're looking at, why do we run at this time? Why do we run on this day? Has that been effective for us, or is it just, again, because we always did it that way?
Yeah.
So that's going to be significant. We want to add more with some heritage railway things, some special charters that are just mixed trains. We're very lucky to have the only 2 TH&B, Toronto, Hamilton, Buffalo Railway boxcars left in the world operating. A TH&B coach that's over 100 years old now. Little things like that we can supplement our regular passenger service with a value-added experience for someone who may be more interested in railways as opposed to but taking a trip on a heritage train. And right now, there's only 3 operating steam locomotives, to the best of my knowledge, in Canada right now. And one out west, Prairie Dog Central in Winnipeg, and ours. We don't put it out there enough. We need to work that into our schedule more.
Peter, Merry Christmas to you and
Merry
your
Christmas
family.
to you too. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you. And thank you very much for coming out and doing this today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always a treat to see you.
Thank you. So I'm here with Kim Martin and Irvan Weber. Guys, welcome to the platform. Thank you for agreeing to do this. It's nice and cozy in our Bud car here today.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Welcome to our Christmas set. Guys, I think when people think of the Waterloo Central Railway, they think of the steam engine. They think of number 9, what I refer to as the pride of the fleet. I want to talk to you guys for a few minutes about the steam program. Irvan, how long have you been volunteering here?
12 years.
About 12 years. And Kim?
I've been volunteering with WCR for approximately 8 years now.
About 8.
Yeah.
So Irvan's the old guy? Is that what I hear you saying?
Not really.
He's the experience.
We're the same age, actually.
He's the experience.
He's much more experienced.
Yeah,
with the
you'd
train.
never know he was 80.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, with number 9, tell us a little bit about the engine, when it was built, its wheel configuration. What can you tell us about number 9? And you guys can sort out who tells us what.
So it was built in 1923 in Montreal Locomotive Works. It spent its time in Essex County and then came up to St. Thomas and up here. It's not a late model, but it's got a lot of the late features. It has superheaters and so on.
What's a superheater?
Superheaters where the steam is heated outside of the boiler in the absence of water. So at that point it does no longer have liquid water, so it will not increase in pressure, it will only increase in temperature or increase in energy, which adds a lot of extra efficiency.
And that's an upgrade that's on number 9 that other 060s wouldn't have?
The earlier ones did not have that.
So the net benefit to that is more horsepower?
More efficiency.
More efficiency.
Less coal.
And Kim, you've spent some time shoveling coal
Just a touch.
on number 9. What does it take to be part of the operating crew? First of all, tell us who's involved in making number 9 go down the track and what it takes to be qualified here to do those jobs.
To be qualified, you have to go through a TSSA certification.
And what's
as a
TSSA?
Steam, transportation safety,
Technical.
technical. Okay.
Technical safety.
Technical Safety and Standards Authority.
Okay, so it's a government agency.
It's a government agency in Ontario, and they regulate all of the steam traction operators in Ontario. So whether you're running a boiler for a steam tractor or for a steam engine, you have to have someone who is certified in control of the boiler all of the time after it gets to 15 pounds pressure. So someone must be on site all the time that has TSSA certification for that. To be a fireman, you do need to have a lot of skills and a lot of organizational ability, because as a fireman, you are monitoring basically all of the operations and interpreting what the engineer is going to need as far as steam is concerned while you're traveling. So if you're going to be going up a hill, you have to start putting energy into the system before you get to that hill. You can't do it as you get to that hill. Otherwise, you won't make it to the top of the hill.
It's similar to it's similar to the brakes on the train too.
Similar to the brakes.
You need to organize your braking before you actually need it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
So you have a fireman on board.
Yeah.
And number 9 is coal fired.
Yes.
Okay.
We run through about 2 ton worth of coal during a day of operation.
2 ton of coal.
Yeah. And
That's a lot of shoveling.
that's a lot of shoveling, but it's a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain things that are mesmerizing about operating that train. One of them in particular, and I'm going to go into a kind of a sidebar, is the way in which the air is drawn through the engine or through the firebox is via venturi out of the steam box, out of the smoke box. And when you're chugging, you've always heard a steam engine chugging. When you're doing that, you're pulling extra air through the firebox. So what happens is the fire actually oscillates up and down, and it's mesmerizing.
Like it's on
to
a
watch.
dimmer switch.
No, actually, you can get to the point where it will lift the coal right off of the grates.
Wow.
It's that much energy is in there.
Wow. So you've got a fireman, and then who else is
You have
involved?
an
An engineer.
and then you have usually an observer.
An observer. And what's the role of the observer?
They're usually sitting in the fireman's chair, and they're watching the grade on the other side. One of the problems for an engineer is you can't actually see across to the other side easily.
So they're there for safety, for
They're
grade,
there for
grade
safety more
crossings
than
and
everything
things
else,
like that. Okay. Because the firemen
training.
and training purposes.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of training, so we'll often have extra people in the cab because
Yeah.
we're training new people all the time.
There's not a whole lot of room up there. I've been
No.
up there, and it's not a whole lot of room. It must be terribly hot in the summertime, being on the plate up there.
It's hot in the wintertime too, but then it's hot and cold because you get a good crosswind going through there, and
Yeah.
it's not the healthiest thing. I have a lot of respect for these old timers that did it for a
Oh,
living.
for sure, in all conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as the TSSA qualification goes, do our firemen and our number 9 engineers have to both be TSSA, or just somebody, one of the two?
Just one.
One.
Yeah. We need one person in the cab that's
Yeah,
TSSA.
and that could be the observer, I guess.
Yeah,
technically.
anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's usually the guy shoveling at this point is still learning.
Yeah.
And well, we're all still learning.
Yeah.
But we usually have somebody shoveling. And a lot of times they are not qualified TSSA wise, but they're under our tutelage and will eventually become certified.
Yeah. So when does number 9 operate on the WCR?
Under normal conditions, we run early in the spring. We usually do a run in January, February, and then every long weekend, usually the Saturday and the Monday. That's our schedule. But then we'll take it out for training purposes quite often in between that, because we're trying to train a lot of new people. It's tough to find people who want to stick it out. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get started. We put a lot of time into them, and then they decide to go back to their keyboard.
Yeah, things certainly have changed, but I mean the idea of standing up there and shoveling coal, I mean, it's very appealing to a younger guy like me, because that's an era that I wasn't alive during revenue steam. When revenue steam was a thing on Canada's railways, I just wasn't around. So between the two of you, tell me what's involved in getting number 9 out of bed in the morning, shall we say, on a run day.
If we want to do an 8 o'clock departure, we're in here at 3 in the morning. It takes quite a few hours, about 6 hours, to get it up to speed or up to steam. And the reason for that, we want to bring it up very slowly, because there's a lot of expansion involved. And if you do it too quickly, it's very hard on the vessel. And we are not operating the way they did in the old time, where they kept it hot for the whole season or for the duration of the... So we need to bring it up very slowly, and then and just incidentally, it grows a half an inch in length from cold to hot. So
Really?
it gives you some idea of how much
Wow.
expansion is involved.
Yeah.
So it's very important to bring it up slow. So we, like I said, we bring that up in with wood, take it out of the village, and then switch over to coal. So it's easy to say we bring it up on wood, but that means somebody has to chop up the skids, chop up the wood, hand it up, and often it's pouring rain, and it's not an easy job. So
Yeah.
some people think it's a very romantic thing, and they show up for 1 or 2 times unless we see them.
I think it's a romantic thing when you're watching it go by, or you're at home watching it on your TV screen
Exactly.
go by. Kim, how is it for pull? You've crewed number 9 quite a few times as a fireman. I don't believe you've been engineer
No.
on 9 yet.
No, I haven't
I
been
think you're
engineer.
heading there though.
Yeah.
That'll be great to see in the right hand seat there. How is it for pull? Do you get a sense of how it handled? We have some grades here on the WCR. The Hawksville cut being one, and then southbound out of Elmira, we have that what I call the toboggan run down into Elmira that comes up southbound. How is it for pull?
Oh, it's a very powerful little engine on its own, and we're not exercising that at all. We're not really putting it underneath full steam. We have a limit of 10 mile an hour on the spur that we're on, so you really can't open it up. But as long as you have it under proper pressure, it will pull just perfectly.
And that's what it was made to do.
And that's what it was made
being
to do.
a switcher.
Being a switcher, it was made to just
Yeah.
pull, and it does very, very nicely.
Because correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I've been around for a couple of years, but every time I've seen 9 in operation, it's usually 3 passenger cars and a caboose. That seems to be the typical. Have you seen a longer consist behind it than 3?
Yes.
3 plus a caboose?
Yeah, we've been quite a bit longer. It'll pull a lot more.
Really?
And as we were getting it back into service, we had a diesel on the back end, so we were pulling it as well.
Pulling the diesel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that the insurance policy?
Yeah, it was. But then, of course, we tried to show off and pull it. But it pulls very well.
Yeah.
It has 1,400 horsepower compared to 600 for our diesels
Yeah.
and so on.
Do you know what it weighs?
It weighs 110,000 pounds.
And that's without coal and water?
Correct.
Yeah. So 110,000 pounds plus whatever the tender holds in terms of coal and water.
Correct.
Yeah. How much water would that tender hold?
2,800 gallons.
Gallons. And it'll hold how many ton of coal?
4 tons of coal.
4 ton. So you're using half of a tender load
Yeah.
on an average day. Yeah. Number 9's in our shop right now getting a major tear down and what I call some major TLC. Tell us about what's happening with number 9 in the shop, because I see pieces of it being polished and the jacket's off the boiler and there's all kinds of things happening.
Don't despair. It's all good. Every 10 years, we need to do what's called a D-meter test. So you'll see the boiler marked off in 4-inch grids. And in every intersection, we need to do what we call a D-meter, which is basically an ultrasound. So they have to take a thickness test all over the boiler. This needs to be logged, and we're always apprehensive to make sure that none of these are below the required thickness. Luckily this year we're still in good shape. And to do that, like you say, we have to take off the jacket, or the lagging as we call it. It's a lot of work, but we're now putting it back together. The next step is to do a hydrostatic test, which means fill it up with water, pump it up to 10% over the operating pressure, which is, operating pressure is 180 psi. Take it up to that, make sure we have no leaks, bring the inspector in, he inspects it, then we get our certification, then we have a mini celebration, and we go on to the next step.
Yeah. Kim, if you had to give number 9 an overall grade in terms of her overall health and condition, what letter grade would you give her?
Oh, A plus, of course.
A plus, of course.
I mean, she is an old lady. She's 98 years old, 97 years old at this point in time.
Yeah.
And she needs TLC, but she's actually in very, very good condition. Like, the structure of number 9 is solid. When I was involved in doing the demetering, and it came out in a tolerance level that's more than acceptable.
Yeah.
So, kudos for her, but no, she's in fine shape.
Yeah. Guys, I want to wish you both a very Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Good.
No problem
Thanks
at all.
for paying
Anytime.
attention.
Joining me now in our Bud Car studio is WCR master painter, guy I call Knuckles, Grant Shifley. Grant, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for doing this.
No problem.
You're renowned at the WCR. You're our local painter, but you're also our beef jerky guy.
Oh, well, yeah, I do that too.
How'd you get started in the beef jerky business?
Oh, about 40 years ago. My brother actually started it, and I got onto it, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, it's really good.
I make about 5 different flavors.
Yeah. How often do you make a batch?
Whenever there's demand for it, but
Yeah.
sometimes I can't make it fast enough because
Yeah.
it gets gobbled up.
I understand how that works. Grant, you come from a career in firefighting, is that correct?
That's correct. Waterloo Fire Department, 35 years.
What did you do there from the time you walked in the door to the time you left?
Well,
What did
I
you do?
started off as a first-class firefighter, worked up the ranks to lieutenant, captain, and I was captain training officer, and that's what I retired as.
How did you find the Waterloo Central? How did your time here begin?
It's almost 8 years ago right now, Christmas time. My son brought me in. He was doing the engineer course just to have a look around. I've been here ever since because I I didn't make the mistake, but I said, I like painting. So, sure enough, here I am.
Did you know that there are things to paint here at the WCR?
Not really. I didn't know that.
I think you offered to paint me one day. It was a little awkward.
Maybe
but
I did.
I didn't know you so well then.
As a matter of fact, where we're sitting right now, I did this painting.
It looks great.
All the trim, the ceiling.
So about 8 years ago, around 2012,
It was almost to the day. It was
your son was being trained as a locomotive engineer.
Yes.
Okay. And so he told Pop about that, and then you decided.
He just brought me here to show me what's going on, and
What made you stay? How did the connection
they're
start?
great people.
Good people?
And I'll have to tell you, because Irvon Weber, which we know,
Yep.
he says, "You want something to do, Grant?" And I says, "Sure, I'm here." So my first job was cleaning out the firebox. They stuck me in that hole
Of number 9.
with a wire brush. Me and Caitlin was her name.
Uh-huh.
And the two of us spent the whole day cleaning out the firebox. And I come out, obviously looking pretty black.
Like a coal miner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when I said I paint, well, we got lots of that to do, so Still doing it.
Yeah. So did you have any sort of background or interest in painting before?
Yeah, I
you
did a
came
little
here?
bit of painting on days off and stuff.
Okay.
At the fire service, we had a few stretch of days off, and some of us would paint and
Do some painting.
And you know what? I got one car after the other, and
Yeah.
I'm here 5 days a week volunteering.
Do you remember the first piece of WCR equipment that you worked on in terms of the painting?
Number 9.
Oh, number
I
9.
painted it black.
Painted it black.
Well, that's what. Yeah, it needed a fresh coat, and I painted it black. And
What kind of paint would you use on number 9?
It's rust coat paint.
Rust coat paint.
Yeah,
So it's an oil base.
it's an oil-based rust paint,
Yeah.
and the preparation work is sometimes take longer than the painting does. Sanding all the rust, and
Who works with you on these painting projects? Do you have a team
I've
that
got
you work with?
I've got 2 excellent helpers, Brian Ray and Brad Bennett, and they've been so helpful with me
Yeah.
because I can't do it by myself.
You guys are like the Three Musketeers.
We are.
Here.
Brian doesn't really like painting a lot, so I got him to do all the taping, all the chevrons on the. He has to tape that all off, and then I paint between the chevrons to make the stripes.
I see.
So that's what he's good at.
He's the taper and you're the painter.
He's the taper, and Brad and I are the painters, and
Yeah.
we get along. We work great together.
I refer to the early years of the WCR when all of the equipment was in all of its various heritage colors. I refer to that as the rainbow era.
Right.
You and your team have been largely responsible for bringing the cohesive look to the Waterloo Central. The Tuscan on the cars, the locomotives are CP, Tuscan, and gray. I didn't say maroon, I said Tuscan, so you wouldn't, that's why I call you Knuckles. I don't want you to
That's right.
take me
Don't
out
use
back.
the word
I'll be-
burgundy.
Burgundy.
Tuscan.
Yeah, I'll be cut off from the beef jerky supply if I say a maroon.
There you go.
Tell me about how that came to be in terms of the paint scheme for the diesel. What do you remember about some of the decisions there and the first engine of the 3 that you painted? Do you remember which one was
The first one was the
Was it 65,
6593.
The S3.
I think it was red,
It was, yeah.
if I remember.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 came in 2001, 2002, and I think one of those was green, and the other one was a beige color.
They came from the Ontario Southland Railway.
Right.
Yeah,
So now they're all 3 are all the same.
Yeah.
The original CP colors, and
yeah, they look great.
they do.
Yeah. The scratch I put on the 1, did that ever buff out?
I repaired it for you. I know.
That was
And
a
you cut the tree down too.
I did cut the tree down. I went up immediately and cut the tree down that scratched
good.
the
No, I fixed that up.
fireman side of 1001. What kind of prep work? You can't just walk up to one of these engines and start slapping paint on it.
no.
What walk us through a locomotive repaint, sort of soup to nuts. What has to be done?
A lot of sandpaper and grinding and body work. Bondo the holes if you. Well, yeah, there was quite a few.
Yeah.
Like I say, the preparation I've learned over the years. They say preparation is 92% of the job. 72%. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is preparation, and that's true.
And the rest of it's the actual rolling the paint on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was all done with brushes and rollers. There was I sprayed a little bit on the trucks where the springs and stuff are because it's a little hard to get in there with the brushes. But
Yeah.
all hand done.
Do you prefer to do it with the roller? Do you find it stick better coverage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And then you don't have the
well, there's no other way of doing it. They say,
fumes.
why don't you spray paint it? Well, inside the shop there'd be spray paint all over
the whole shop would be burgundy.
Tuscan.
Gotcha. I want to make sure you're paying attention. How many, this might be hard to give a definitive answer, but how many man hours would be involved from taking one of our diesels from start to finish? I mean, if you had to ballpark it, would it be like 3 of you for a week, 3 of you for 2 weeks?
Oh, you're talking months.
Months to do one
Oh, for sure.
diesel.
I would say you could spend 2 months on one. Not all 3 of us, but I can't go by the hours.
Yeah.
But
You're also not doing
30, let's
40
say
hours
30 hours a week for a month, 2 months.
What have been some of the personal benefits that you've gotten out of hanging out here that you maybe didn't see coming?
I'd say personal satisfaction and the teamwork that we have here and giving back to history.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much about how a steam engine operates. How these big things can stay on that little skinny track still amazes me, but
It must be a great feeling and a healthy sense of pride to watch the train roll through here.
Oh, it sure is.
And everything's all the same color, and you know that you and your team.
and the
painted that.
remarks that we get from, especially on this car, because this used to be the Santa train car and the Polar Express, and
Yeah.
the kids are what make it for me. Of all the work I do, they do let me have some fun once in a while. I am a bit of a joker sometimes with the children, and I like to have fun with them. And
The biggest smile I've ever seen on Grant Shifley's face is when he's on the Santa train with the kids.
oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Uncle Grant.
I'll never forget just a short thing when I have my safety vest on, obviously, and the little child looks at me and says, "Are you the engineer?" I says, "Yep." And he says, "Well, then who's driving the train?" I says, "I got it on automatic pilot." And the little kids and even the parents started laughing. It's just so much fun.
Grant, thank you so much for, you probably don't hear it enough, and I'm not a spokesman for the railway, but from one volunteer to another, I want to thank you and your team for
no problem.
all of the hours you put in here. And I felt if I didn't say that, you might cut off the jerky supply. So
I appreciate it.
I'm joined in the Budcar studio with my good friend and fellow volunteer, Robert Clarkson. I can't call you Robert because we're both Roberts.
Brother Bob.
Brother Rob.
Brother Rob. Brother Bob.
Whenever anybody calls and I hear Robert on the other end of the phone, I know it's either the federal government or it's somebody in healthcare.
Right.
So it's Brother Rob and Brother Bob.
And here it's Rob and Bob.
Exactly. Yeah, we're twins. We're like
Identical in some respects.
we're like and not so much in others.
Anyway.
Speaking of healthcare, Rob, you are retired from the healthcare field. Tell us about your civilian career and your
My
working
civilian
days.
career, I was a registered nurse for 34 years, specializing in mental health. And
That probably explains why you put up with me.
that explains quite a bit of what I put up with, quite a lot around here. I think it's not worth getting into it. However, I did find that very helpful because this being a people-orientated attraction, you know, you have to know how to deal with people, and even the angry customers.
Yeah,
Who
we don't
get
get
on-
any of those, do we?
Very rare. You get one or two, but I
Yeah.
mean, you know how to soothe it over, you know, and they come away feeling better about it.
I'll rewind the tape and ask you, when and how did you find the Waterloo Central Railway?
I was living in Peterborough at the time. I knew I was going to be moving to Cambridge, so I went on the internet and I said, "What can you do in Cambridge?" And right away this thing came up, "You can become a locomotive engineer." Well, that did it. I said, "That's it, let's go, we're on the way."
Pack the car.
Yep.
Here we go.
So that was it. It didn't matter how far away from Ajax it was or anything like that, how far away. The key was you can become a locomotive engineer, and that did it.
So you saw this ad?
I
And
saw this ad, it popped up online and said you can become a railroad engineer. I didn't believe it at first. I thought maybe it was one of these kind of scammer things. But I had absolutely no experience with a railway.
Yeah,
Barely knew what was the front end and what was the back end.
yeah.
You know.
So when I arrived on the property back in
I said, "Uh-oh,
yeah.
here comes trouble."
back in early 2019, Rob, you were so friendly, and we kind of hit it off right from the.
There's therapy for that.
I know, and we spend a lot of time on board service, and that's your specialty. That's what you do currently.
That's what I do, and that's what I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
The onboard, I enjoyed meeting the people. I mean, we would get people coming on who had never been on a train since they were a little kid. We get some kids who'd come on the train, had never been on a train before, had no idea what to expect or what it was like, and they went away with a wonderful experience.
So just to explain to our audience who may not be familiar with sort of the rank and file of how we run trains, what are the positions on the passenger cars?
Well, there's the train service personnel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then there's a conductor and an engineer and all that
Yeah,
kind of
they
stuff.
don't matter.
No, they don't matter.
Yeah.
No, there's a conductor, the engineer, and there's maybe 4 or 5 what they call train service well, 1 train service manager, maybe 4 train service reps, and the only difference is the manager organizes the reps to make sure all the cars are covered and the doors are properly.
And that's a role, TSM we call it.
Yeah.
Railroading has its acronyms, train service manager.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you are the TSM.
Yeah, and enjoyable, learning something new every day I was on the train.
So in onboard service, what do you do? Walk us through some of your duties and responsibilities as an onboard service.
Well, first of all, making sure that the people get on board safely, that they get to a seat, and that there's, that they're all in their proper spots. Filling them in about what to expect on the train, how long the run is, where it goes, what they can see on the way up and back. If they want to purchase any onboard refreshments, they can do that too.
You also have to adjust the HVAC controls. Should it
The
be
what?
The air conditioning?
Oh, the air. Oh, yeah. You open a few doors, open
Yeah.
a few windows, yes,
Yeah.
and let the fresh air in. That's
Yeah.
right.
Although we do have an
Although
air-conditioned car.
In the winter, the trick was getting the heat come on.
Yeah.
But
It's one of the challenges of operating heritage equipment.
yeah, but it all worked.
It
Eventually, it warmed up, and it was a nice ride. And
So, what are some of the challenges that you can run into that pop up when you're on board service?
sometimes you get groups of people coming on, and they're saying, "How come they're in my seat?" Or "How come we can't all sit together as a group?" And I would sort of just say, "Well, it's a heritage coach. I mean, it's only designed to seat basically 2 and 2. If you have a group of 8, it's hard to get all 8 people in one spot. We'll do our best to try to accommodate maybe beside each other or something like that. But those, and then you get the odd one. You get someone get in who doesn't have a ticket, and you think, okay, well, how are we going to handle this? We're going to throw them off board or at the next stop.
We have a really nice bridge over the Conestoga
Yeah,
River.
I point that out every time we come up. We're coming over the bridge now. For those of you who do not have tickets, please meet me in the vestibule, and we'll attend to that.
Yeah, it's your hulking physical presence, Rob. It's
Probably.
yeah, it's what kept me in line when I was, on
So
board.
there wasn't really major things that we ran into. It was mostly either ticketing or seating, and maybe sometimes you get people with disability issues. But
Yeah.
If you knew how to handle it and did it safely, it all went well.
Yeah.
No problems.
You've alluded to it earlier, but you find that your career in nursing really prepared you for this role.
I think it did
at the
because
railway.
it helps you plan ahead, problem solve, try to anticipate what could happen and what you're going to do about it.
Yeah.
The best way to deal with it.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of volunteering at the WCR?
Giving a little talk on the railway, like when it was built, where it goes to, how long the run is, things that you might see on the way up and back, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How the car is set out. People would come on the train and they would really have no idea what to expect, except some would seem to think it was going to be a deluxe first class, all bells and whistles.
Yeah. And then we rock and roll over jointed rail on a branch line in vintage equipment going back and forth.
So you teach them
back and
how
forth.
to do the railway walk,
Yeah.
and and it worked quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you think of, do you have any sort of a top 3 or maybe a 1 or 2 memories that come to mind
I
of
really like
experiences that you can share with us?
I really like the winter Santa trains. Those, especially with the little kids coming on. I mean, when we used to run up to the end of the line, and I'd open the door so Santa would get on, and then the kids would just go crazy because Santa was there.
You can still see the magic of Christmas in the kids.
Yeah, because for some of them, not only was it the first time they'd been on board a train, but hey, here's Santa. So we're going to see Santa.
Yeah.
He'd make his way and see it. Of course, then our job was to make sure that Santa didn't linger too long, but got to see everyone.
Rob, thank you so much for coming in. And,
well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Always been fun working with you, and Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you too.
Thank you. I am here in the Budcar studio with Matthew Schilling. I'm not going to call you Matthew. I don't think I've ever called you Matthew.
I don't think you have. It's
Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
There's no second syllable.
No, it's easy.
Nice, nice hat. Where'd you get that?
Thank you. I was watching one of my favorite podcasts recently, and I figured I'd get some merchandise from them.
Keep shoveling that sunshine,
You
mister.
got it.
Yeah. Matt is my direct supervisor, and he's half my age and half my size, but, that's how it goes. We get along.
Yeah, most of the time.
Matt, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for being here.
You are, besides my babysitter, you are the shop foreman for the Waterloo Central. You are a paid employee.
Yep.
And you also are in the capacity of volunteer coordinator.
Yeah.
Let's start with your volunteer coordinator responsibilities first. Talk to me about what it takes to become a volunteer, what kind of person might be a good applicant here, and sort of what that process entails.
Well, of course, we'll all start with the person's initiative to go out of their way to request to become a volunteer. So we are always trying to get more people out here by doing maybe some little advertising, and of course on social media as well. And then you go right to our website, and there's a link right there. You email us, and we actually send you a volunteer application. Once you fill it out and send it to us, we take a look over it. And we sit down and have an interview with you because we want to make sure we're getting the right type of people here at the railway. The willingness to learn. This is, for a lot of our volunteers around here, this is something new. This is something that they might have not done as a career in the past. So making sure you have the willingness to obey the rules and be safe about it. And from there, after the interview process, I usually get them in for a nice site tour, take a look around our yard, our shop, and hopefully maybe meet some of the volunteers already working on our projects in there. And from there, we get you started on training on whatever you want to do. So basically, we have two, I would say, different divisions. We have our shop and restoration crew, which focus on the restoration of our equipment and the maintenance of all of our rolling stock. And then we also have our operational crew. So as you had Rob on, is the onboard service crew. So we're dealing with passengers throughout the day, loading, offloading, snack bar. And then if you would want to, you can move up to conductor and engineer roles where you're actually controlling the train. And we do all of our own in-house training. So we're not looking for other companies around. We do everything in-house, so it's all done by us. And you're qualified for our little 7 miles of track.
It's enough to keep us busy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
it doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a lot of moving pieces. Yep. So what else are your, as a volunteer coordinator, what are your responsibilities in terms of coordinating volunteers? What does that mean?
So I also help organize getting the volunteers here. So for an example, if we were running trains, I'd be responsible for all the crew calls, making sure we have the adequate crew. You need an engineer, you need a conductor, you need a train service manager, and of course a train service volunteer. So I'm responsible for getting all those people there. And of course, if there's any issues, I need to be the one to step in and maybe fill a role, or maybe contact someone else that might be available to fill that role. And right now, we're working on our schedule for our shop. So we're scheduling shop people in. to do work on certain projects. So that's also what I'm doing. So usually every Friday I give out some calls to a bunch of people, see who's coming in, and organize all that.
Okay, and you also act as a liaison between the volunteers and management, or
Yes, I would say I'm
the
definitely
board.
the I would say maybe the front facing. I'm the one always here every day.
You are always here.
Yep, dealing with everyone, and exactly, I kind of go up the ladder then, and let Peter know as well.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Yeah. Now that alone sounds like a really busy position, but in addition to that, you are also shop foreman.
Yeah.
Tell our audience about what shop foreman is and what that entails.
Of course, yeah. So as shop foreman, I do a lot of the maintenance on the locomotives and keeping up on the annual maintenance. It's not just about running these trains. These trains need a lot of maintenance into them. So we've worked with other more experienced railroaders. So I'm getting that a lot from these veterans of the railway, old mechanics and stuff. So we've set up schedules for each of our locomotives and how they're maintained, what needs to go into them. So that's what a lot of I focus on as shop foreman. And the volunteer coordinator and shop foreman actually kind of combine with some of the projects going on in the shop right now, as we have Caboose 61 in for a repainting right now, and organizing the crew to get in for that, as well as always a helping hand as well. As I like to call myself the elevator operator, because I'm the one getting them up to the roof so they can do a little fixing up there.
Yeah.
And get the paint up there.
So speaking of restoration projects, you talked about Caboose 61. That's our THMB
Yep.
steel cladded wood caboose. It's a wood caboose with steel cladding on
Yep.
it. What's happening?
Yeah, what's happening? So I'd say the two big ones is, as you mentioned, 61. We want to take that back to the original TH&B yellow. So right now, I think we just finished up getting those right color codes, and
The tie-cat scheme.
the tie-cat scheme, exactly.
Yeah.
And hopefully the next couple of weeks we'll have some more news on that, and it's definitely progressing along.
Yeah.
Another big project we're having is 15,000, our business car. Back in the day, it used to be a sleeper car named Jellicoe, but in the 80s, it got to turn into a track geometry car.
CN Heritage.
CN Heritage, you got it.
Yeah.
Actually, you would have also seen it painted in blue and yellow. I believe it was in the 80s. I was in the back of some Via trains I saw some pictures of. But right now, we're working that into our grand business car. So we're working on getting a nice ornamental fixtures in it and getting that wood paneling up. So that project's just starting right now. We're just getting all the tools we need to get going on that.
Yeah. You're a busy guy.
Try to.
Yeah.
Try to keep busy.
I up until about a month ago, I thought you actually lived here. Because
Yes.
there's never been a moment where I've been on the property and Matthew Schilling has not been here. You are the first one in the morning
Yep.
and the last one to leave.
Exactly. I couldn't even imagine how many hours here. But really, this is not a job for me. This is not work for me. This is the love and passion that I enjoy coming here, waking up in the morning. This is what I look forward to in the day. This is my hobby. This is what I love to do.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not even a day at
But
work.
as a job, there are still some days that are probably better than others, and there's always stresses that
Yeah.
that come. And with the volunteers, I mean, I know that it doesn't matter how good your people are, it's still trying to herd cats sometimes. And
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Especially when it gets busy around here,
Yeah.
you have a lot of people around, right?
are we currently looking for volunteers?
We are always looking for volunteers. So
Am I being replaced?
we haven't told you yet, but we're always looking for more volunteers. As especially going into next year, we want to run more trains and get more people out here. So we're always looking for volunteers. You just need to go to our website. You can find all the information there. The second you send the email, you'll be talking to me on the other end of that email, and I'm going to send you that application back, and we'll get that process started.
When and how did you start off at Waterloo Central? Did you start as a paid employee, or how did it start for you?
So back, it would have been almost 6 years ago now. So I started out getting my volunteer hours for school. It was something as simple as that. So I started coming here on a regular basis.
You're a young man. Like I
Yeah.
said, you're half my size
Yep.
and half my age. So you would have been how old at the
October
time?
October of 2016. I would have been 17 at that time. Yeah, about
Yeah.
17 at that time. So for an example, as a good reference point, that was below the age that we can qualify you as a conductor. So I was just helping with the shop around, helping with
For school
onboard.
hours.
For school hours, exactly.
Yeah.
And it snowballed from there. Obviously, I did like trains before. So I found the organization, it was like one big family. And you feel comfortable here. So I continued on. I kept volunteering. It was through the winter. I dressed up as an elf that year. I do remember that very vividly. And going into next year, I was still that young guy, so I was the Easter Bunny on our Easter Bunny train.
Lucky you.
Oh yeah, lucky me. That was that was quite the fun ordeal, so to say.
Yeah.
But again, it was having fun. It was this was amazing to have the opportunity to do this. Anyway, so I got a little older, of course, and I actually started training for conductor. So within the next year, I got qualified as a conductor, so I was helping run all of our trains. And then, of course, eventually engineer. Again, another year after that. And trained engineer now. I've driven number 9 a couple times, and
that's awesome.
It's quite the experience.
Talk to me about what it's like to hog on number 9.
It is a whole different playbook. There's something about driving a diesel locomotive, which is, again, there's a lot of skill involved in it. But once you know how to do it, you can drive it. Number 9 is a whole new ball game because you're dealing with the pressure. You're not just opening a throttle and your engine RPM is increasing. You're opening a throttle and you're letting steam pass through a tiny little channel going all the way to the pistons. If your pressure's a little higher or a little lower, it's going to change how the steam locomotive reacts to your input to it. So it's a whole new ball game, and even for me, it's something I'm still learning. You can never stop learning when it comes to something like that. It's,
so you've operated number 9 a couple of times?
Yeah, a couple times. So it was just in switching with the yard, not a passenger train running up and down the line. But yeah, just around the yard. Irvine
what a
was
thrill.
Nice enough. Yep.
You must have been grinning ear to ear.
Oh my goodness, that was the one day Peter got a picture of me hanging out of the cab. As you said, smiling, black, but smiling. It was a grand day. You think back to those days, right?
Yeah.
That first time driving a steam engine.
I've really enjoyed getting to know you and working with you over the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun, and even though you and I have a difference in age, we're really simpatico in a lot of things. You have a real passion for what's going on here.
Exactly.
It never seems like you're bothered by anything. I mean,
no, I am hard to bother. I will not get bothered easily.
I've tried.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't hit bottom with Matt.
Not quite yet. There's as you mentioned earlier, there's definitely those days where those stress does increase. Sure. But I've learned around here, you roll with the punches. You keep going. You have a train to run. You be safe about it, and you make sure everyone's happy on that train, and you kind of just keep rolling with it.
Matt, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Take care.
You too.
For more of the platform, you can find us on Facebook. We often post there. We give you extra photos, maybe the odd little extra video, a little look behind the scenes. We're also on Spotify at the Platforum Station House audio series. And if you hit like and subscribe, you won't miss any new Platform episodes when we post them here on YouTube. On behalf of all of us at the Platform and the Waterloo Central Railway, I want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thanks for watching.